Have you missed it? Like, do you guys think, I should have got in on Bitcoin
I don't spend a lot
5 years ago?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is something that certainly a lot of people think, is going to rise as an alternative currency.
The Australian Bitcoin Podcast, presented by Heartblock.
It's not a currency, it's not money. I don't understand it.
G'day. How's it going? Welcome to the Australian Bitcoin Podcast, episode 109, where we bring you the best of the Bitcoin and macro signal from an Australian perspective. Once again, I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Mike. And Mike, the system stresses. And we had our dear leader take to the airwaves in a national broadcast for all of 3 minutes? I don't know. I didn't watch it. Maybe you did. I don't know if it was buttering, softening us up for something, but I'm keen to hear your take. Welcome to the show, mate. It's good to have you.
Thank you. 109. 109.
We're recording this on the 2nd of April, 2026. Block height 943,319. Hash rate is sitting just above 1 zeta hash or 1,108 exahash. The price of Bitcoin, it is all over the shop, particularly today, just as we went to air, as it's fallen. Couple $1,000. What do we got? 66,420 in US cuck bucks, and we're hitting 96,393 Aussie dollary dues. So, the Bitcoin price, look, it's hard to stay zen. I go backwards and forwards with this thing. I try and ignore it, try and switch it off, try and engage with it. Like sometimes you have to, because we do podcasts like this. So you have to kind of be interactive with this. So, I mean, look, it's been range bound at that sort of 100K area. Not exactly fireworks, but certainly not a dramatic faceplant either. We are well below where we were a year ago, at roughly 133,000 or something. The Bitcoin price, I wish I could ignore it. That's all I'll say.
You just want to be watching the oil price now, right? It's we're no longer watching the Bitcoin price. We're watching
or the
oil
1 minute
price.
chart. Maybe I just need to bring back the 1 minute chart, and then I'll feel
the 1 minute chart. No, I think who is it? Chris's mantra of just not looking at the price. I think that's the right strategy. Don't look at the price. Get on with your life. Watch the oil price. That's where my eyes are at the moment.
Do we know what the oil price is currently? Have you got that to hand?
104, $104 US a barrel. So anything over $100 US is considered high.
Right.
So
right.
Sitting at 104, up 50% in the last month. So it's gone up 50% in a month.
Well, we did get our fuel excise cut. When you get paid, your employer pays the payroll tax on the way out, and then you pay some income tax on the way into your bank account. And then when you send that on to buy things like fuel or groceries or whatever, it'll incur some sort of a tax. It's GST, fuel excise. Alcohol has quite a hefty tax on it as well. But our dear leader, in all of his infinite wisdom, has decided to cut that in half, so by 50%. So we're kind of back at prices we haven't seen since, last week.
It's great. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's and my one and only question is, who's paying for the excise? Who's paying for it? Who pays?
I'm pretty sure. I think it was early this morning. I drove past a fuel station, and it looked like the fuel, like excise, had started to come into effect, like almost immediately. How does that even happen? Isn't there like infrastructure? I mean, maybe I'm an idiot. I'm sure that that's the truth, but how? Like, what is the mechanism? If you can just wave a magic wand, which is apparently what you can do, and then all of a sudden it's just immediately affected, like a scene at the fuel pump. Like, there's no channels or processes that need to happen. I mean, it seems quite simple.
Well,
Really?
thankfully, there is still somewhat of a competitive market between servos and fuel retailers in the country. And so the thing you want to look at is there's something called a terminal price. There are trackers floating around. Maybe I'll track one down and we'll throw it into the show notes. But there are these, you actually, if you want to track this accurately, you want to look at what's called the terminal price, which is the price of the fuel as it exits a terminal, which can be like your port, for example, or a refinery. And what is the price that retailers are paying? Wholesalers are paying as the truck rolls off the terminal. That's what you're going to be watching for prices. And now when it actually gets to your retailers, your actual servos, that's where they can do their little tweaks and play their games around the final price that you pay at the pump. And thankfully, because there are so many different servers, so many different competitors out there, they do keep each other in check. You know, that is the free market at play. If one server kept their price high, you drive on the next one, simple as. And so they do keep each other in check pretty quickly. And so they are beholden to, as soon as one retailer cracks and brings their prices down because the excise got lifted, suddenly everyone has to do it. Otherwise, that server is going to steal all the business. Now, it does get a bit tricky when you're sort of further out in the boonies, in the middle of nowhere, and there's fewer choice available to you. And that's why you do see prices, go a bit higher the further out you get. But generally, that is how it's kept in check. But yeah, so Albanese's let it rip. He's pulled off the excise. But the obvious thing is, we're still paying for it. We're paying for it in the debasing of your currency. Because how is the government going to pay for cutting the excise? It's going to be printing more dollars. So, yeah, you're still paying for it in the dollars that you already have are being devalued. So don't think of it as... Sorry,
you keep going, man.
Don't think of it as a leg up, as a helping hand or anything. You are still paying for this in the long term, and your children are paying for this in the long term with the devaluing of their currency.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of breaking your legs. The same mob basically breaking your legs and then handing you a crutch and saying, "Look how much kind I am to help you." I'm old enough to remember some 6 years ago, almost to the day, when oil traded negative at minus 37 a barrel, and it was so low that it was actually on the dollar menu at McDonald's. I don't understand. I've watched Landman, and I appreciate that show. The creator of that is he's kind of on the money there, but there's a scene in that show where the main character, can't remember his name, is basically talking about the oil markets and the price, and you kind of want to sit around, I think it was $75, $80 a barrel. This is USD. And anything above north of 100, you're going to start running into problems. And it's kind of like that's what we're seeing. I just don't understand how you can fluctuate over a 6-year period from negative 37 cents a barrel. So they're basically giving it away for free. Like you can buy a whole barrel.
Are you saying volatility is a problem? Price volatility is a problem?
Well, volatility is vitality. I'm down with all of that, but I just like this seems slightly manipulated. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. But end of the day, the world runs on hydrocarbons, and so messing with the price of hydrocarbons is going to cause a lot of chaos. And one of the things we might see from this is the popping of the AI bubble. We won't get too far into the weeds, but you linked me that interesting article which talked about how Oracle, one of the big tech unicorns or whatever you want to call it over in the US, is running into credit stress and having to do all these layoffs to try and cash flow their credit position off the back of costs increasing, off the back of their inputs increasing, off the back of the oil price. So while I thought we'd see an AI bubble pop just because it's there's a lot of hot air in there. And, we saw the first step of that with OpenAI rolling back Sora, the video generation software that they released, was just burning a hole in their bottom line. So they've rolled it back. I kind of thought that was the first sort of domino in the popping of the AI bubble. But it might actually be Oracle and their credit position, their precarious position off the back of the oil price rising. We'll go back to Albanese and his address yesterday, and then we'll talk a bit more about Bitcoin. Is keep in mind, this is buttering us up. This is almost like a fattening the pig for their next move. This is my, tinfoil hat's already on firmly. Well, not really tinfoil hat.
Let's
I think
go.
it's just,
It's a very reasonable. I think, to be honest, just as a side note, we need reparations for conspiracy theorists. It needs to be paid out in Bitcoin.
Conspiracy theorists they're being proven right every single day,
accurate.
more and more and more. Hats off, tinfoil hats off to the conspiracy theorists out there. But Albanese's address is setting us up for, and in 2 weeks, hopefully I'll be vindicated next time we record. They're basically, so the address it was 3 minutes, it was super short, it was crap, it's not worth watching. But it was basically just him doing his school mom thing of saying, oh, we Australians, Aussies need to pull together. We need to pull together. We're hurting. We've removed we've halved the excise. We've cut in half. But now it's on you. It's on you Australians to pull together. And instead, you need to take the train. You need to get on the push bike. You need to dust off your push bike out of the shed.
And we need to put on the mask while we're driving as well. Is this coronavirus?
Exactly. It's a repeat of the COVID similar stuff, but it's a psychological trick. So they've put it on us to pull together and take the train instead of driving to work, so that you're free.
Do you know what would be super simple solution to this, rather than me having to worry about this bullshit, is to just not bomb brown people or anyone for that matter. That would be cool. Yeah, we could just not do that, and then I could just go about my day.
Yep. How about we just don't engage in globalist wars? How's that for an option? But apparently that's not an option for our government. But here's what we'll see in 2 weeks. So now that this address has gone out and it's put the onus on Australians to do their part.
2 weeks to catch the bus.
Yep. 2 weeks to flatten the curve, flatten the usage. And then in 2 weeks' time, they'll turn around and say, you Australians let each other down. You did not get on your push bike. You did not catch the train. Australians. So now the government has no choice but to relax, guys. To instigate rationing.
Yeah.
That's and they'll start to bring in other things, odd and even days, license plates can go and fill up.
They cancelled Wednesdays in Sri Lanka, did they not? Didn't they say something to that effect? I'd have to pull that tweet up.
Wednesdays? Like a feel-free Wednesday?
Yeah. In the BBC World on the 17th of March, Sri Lanka declares Wednesdays off as Asian countries try to conserve fuel.
So so our government knows that they're so disliked, and the reaction off the back of our learnings from COVID, that they can't do something too egregious too quickly. So that's why they're going to do these little psychological tricks. They're going to say, okay, now it's time for Australians to pull together and voluntarily reduce your fuel usage. Fast forward to 2 weeks or a month or maybe a couple of months. You just didn't do it. You didn't stop driving. So now we have to bring in fuel-free Wednesday, odd and even days for your number plates you can fill up, bring in rationing, all this sort of thing. But it's because of your fault, because you didn't pull your part. You didn't curb your usage.
Are we going to get Channel 9 celebrities, Channel 7 celebrities doing a piece to camera, nice, moody music, uplifting, basically saying we're all in this together, and we all need to carpool effectively? Like, rather than keep our distance, we actually need to get closer, and we need to get into more vehicles together in order to do the things. Like truckies could pool their resources, and they could take shifts or something of driving all of the raw materials around up and down the highways and such.
We may see them pull out all the stops of the propaganda thing, guilt people into usage, do the carpooling, bust out the celebrities. We may see all of this stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of, people should be, get on your push bike. If you're just going to the coffee shop around the corner, or you're going to the gym, or you're going to whatever, and you are physically able to do so, but
do it because you want to do it. Because you voluntarily want to hop on the bike. Don't do it because someone's telling you to do it.
Yes, and kind of this is where kind of COVID shit the bed on everything, where previously I would be like, yeah, maybe that's fair enough. All right, I'll get on the push bike so that my fuel can go to the truckers or whatever. But now it's like, no, where I would normally get on my push bike is like, no, let's get the car out.
I want to break some CV joints.
This is the result of tearing up the social contract. You tear up the social contract like our government loves to do. You're just pissing people off and turning them against you. We're
We
seeing
will
that. We're living in
bring
that.
this back to Bitcoin, I promise. And actually have a bit of a link here, but there's 2 points. So off the back of the Sri Lanka thing, there was also an article in the ABC News on Monday, the 16th of March, basically with the headline, "Fuel Rationing a Chance in Australia if War Continues to Trim Global Oil Supplies, Experts Say." A couple of points here. Apparently, I was talking to you earlier today, Australia has been non-compliant in regards to its oil reserves in terms of its fuel reserves since around 2013. We're supposed to have at least a minimum of 90 days.
I think it's
And
actually
we've been,
2003. I think it's earlier.
oh
I think it's a
gosh,
lot longer than that. I think it's since 2003 or some ridiculously long time ago. We have been non-compliant with the recommended fuel reserves
is that
held
we, like
within
the
our
royal, we
borders.
like I've been non-compliant with my fuel reserves. You've been non-compliant, like all the
Yeah, you were
listeners.
supposed to have a tank of diesel in reserve in your garage. No, that's
Uh,
bullshit. In fact, people that have done that, people that your preppers, just like how
they're
Bitcoiners think that
hounded.
Bitcoiners are going to be attacked once the currencies start collapsing, the Australian dollar starts hyperinflating. Bitcoiners are going to be attacked for having the foresight and the prepping of getting some Bitcoin ready just in case for a rainy
Yeah,
day,
you
put
will
it
be
away just
punished
in case. Same thing with
for
people
being
that
smart.
have thought, hmm, we are missing our mark for fuel reserves in this country. I operate a business that relies on fuel. I'm gonna have the foresight to have a tank of diesel installed in my backyard. And now those people are getting attacked through our government and through our media, saying they're hoarding, they're hoarding, they're getting more fuel than they need. I'm not going to say there's not a lot of panic buying happening, like there absolutely is. And that is actually what's causing a lot of this perceived shortage. It's not actually because there is a legitimate shortage.
It's toilet
There is
paper
a
all over again.
Exactly. There's a supply squeeze. There is an increase in cost, but there isn't exactly a shortage yet. The people that are going out and doing panic buying, especially in these remote areas where supply chains are very quite tight, FIFO, just-in-time delivery of fuel in the Sejuna and all these places. The media is then parading, oh, they're running out of fuel, another server's running out of fuel. Yeah, it's because people are panic buying and they are stocking up.
There's
And yet the
mining
media is
companies
just
with
running with it.
like enormous fuel reserves because they have to have them because their business wholly and solely relies at the base. I mean,
Yes.
the whole economy relies wholly and solely at the base on energy.
Yes.
I'm curious to know whether or not we might be in a position where we'll see confiscation, effectively, of private stocks, from internationally, like global companies that operate here in Australia. That will be an interesting thing. I mean, maybe that's tinfoil hatty of me. I'm not sure. Tyler
I'm not. I'm
Green.
not at that. I'm not at that point yet. I think that
Okay.
our government is too in bed with the, because you're obviously referring to like our mining industry, our gas industry, all these sorts of outfits. They're so buddy with our government that will never happen. If we're going to see any, I don't think we'll see any appropriation of reserves. We'll just see rationing and restrictions on the common man.
Great. Side note: Tyler Green. He ran for the Senate recently in the election over in your great state, which went swimmingly. Australia's money supply, he tweeted this on the 31st. Australia's money supply has just jumped again, $3.37 trillion to $3.4 trillion. So that's 30 billion roughly. So what, just magic $30 billion out of thin air. Maybe actually that's associated with that 30 billion that went missing just a few weeks ago. And I keep harping on that, but I'm just flabbergasted that you can lose 30 billion. But I'm also, by the same token, flabbergasted that you can just manifest, print magic into nothing, from nothing rather, 30 billion. So that's interesting. And you mentioned, okay, cut the fuel excise, but in the meantime, they print $30 billion, they devalue the currency. That makes its way through the economy and you get higher prices for everything. Your purchasing power gets diminished. And this is kind of why we Bitcoin. This is why Hard Block exists. This is why we talk about, solutions rather than the problems all the time. Yes, Bitcoin doesn't immediately fix the oil crisis. If anything, actually, it's quite interesting. There was a post by Michael Dunworth, who we've had on the pod, who could forget that end of year rant that we had back around just before Christmas last year. If you haven't heard that, I would suggest, I would commend it to you. Go and have a listen. But he was making the comparison between Bitcoin as the battle and AI as the battle of energy. And basically, energy is finite. AI needs lots of it. Bitcoin needs lots of it. And so you've got these two opposing forces, although we can see where they're going with regards to interoperability and AI agents preferring to use money that isn't behind an API key or anything like that. But notionally, the narrative that would happen superficially, you would see that Bitcoiners would say, well, like this is cryptographic security, it's sound money, the hash rate protects the network, we need to, direct more energy to the network to make it more secure, to make the money harder, to make the money sounder. We have all these things. And then AI on the other side are basically saying, well, no, like, because we need it to boost productivity because currently, everything is expensive. So we need to do more with less, et cetera, et cetera. And these things go backwards and forwards. And Mike's point is basically, if we don't as a community, I don't know, Bitcoin community as an ecosystem, kind of figure out those sorts of narrative angles, we're just going to be overrun by this AI demand for energy, let alone the demand for energy for your car, right? And just to do things day to day. And just to play into that point you were making, like it is a way in for people to point the finger at Bitcoin as, oh gosh, look at all the waste. I mean, we saw, what's his name? Professor Steve Keen. Dr. Professor Steve Keen, because that's what it has in his bio with his leather jacket, was making these same old arguments about Bitcoin wasting energy. And Daniel Batten, God bless his soul, rebuked Professor Keen's statements that, completely misaligned. But it doesn't matter because he gets all of these different views. It gets retweeted. The narrative takes off. Mainstream can talk about it. And here we are in this niche little bubble talking about how good Bitcoin is. And that is a big concern for me.
So your concern is that we're losing the narrative war against AI, or for hearts and minds of?
It's mostly hearts and minds, and because ignorance abounds and everybody basically mid curves it. I do that on occasion too, no worries. But the fundamental, like that narrative trench warfare that we're in, because that's where it's not really kinetic anymore. It's all about psychological warfare and who has the best narrative, and particularly online. And if AI is currying up favor to regulation and they are spinning that yarn that we can boost productivity, you should direct your energy to us. We already see Bitcoin miners switching off and actually, putting their money into AI.
Let me run down the list as to why I'm not concerned about really any of that. And I almost feel like we almost don't need to engage with these people anymore. We just let things play out, get on with your life. Firstly, AI bubble might and probably will pop quite soon, and we'll see a bit of a collapse there. It'll collapse down and rebuild again as bubbles do in different shapes and forms. We're kind of seeing the early stages of that now. We're seeing stresses in those markets. On the other side of things, I think AI will probably shoot itself in the foot when some kind of travesty happens that turns public opinion against AI and these companies. And an example of that will be some kind of crazy malware driven by AI that hacks half the planet, or some kind of drone warfare thing that gets unleashed in Iran that is, on OpenAI's military wing, and it kills a bunch of civilians or something. And it's found that it was done by AI, machine learning powered drones or whatever. And just like that, it'll turn public opinion against AI in many different shapes and forms. If you're bullish on AI and you don't think that any of these things are going to happen, we're already seeing, as you said earlier, bots are preferring Bitcoin for using for interacting on the internet, interacting with various services, with interacting with other bots, with interacting with other people. They prefer to use Bitcoin because it just works. The system's already there. API is already ready. Bots can go and use Bitcoin. They can't use Australian dollars, but they can use Bitcoin, so they're going to use Bitcoin. So even if AI doesn't wig out and kill everyone or turn us against it or whatever, or the bubble doesn't pop or whatever, Bitcoin is going to be used by these bots to do stuff anyway. So your average normie doesn't really need to be won over to the side of Bitcoin because they're going to be using some app on their phone which has an AI agent on the back end, which is transacting using Bitcoin. So, and the normie at the front doesn't even know what Bitcoin is. I do kind of flip in and out of throwing up my hands trying to explain to the next person about Bitcoin, and they're like, but I don't understand it, I can't hold it. I'm getting to that point that a lot of Bitcoiners do, which is they're sick and tired of trying to convince people about it. The silver lining is that we may get to a point where we don't have to anymore because normies are just using their apps, using their software. They're talking, they're probably not even looking at a screen anymore. They're just talking through their Apple AirPods into an AI bot, which is handling transactions on the back end, which happen to be on Bitcoin rails. That could happen sooner than we think. So winning hearts and minds is not really that necessary. And the other silver lining I think that we're going into now is the geopolitical situation worldwide is deteriorating to the point that we may see a necessity for a decentralized currency in Bitcoin as people become more politically oppressed in their nations and they turn to the alternative money of Bitcoin and they start to use it to escape the digital panopticon that is being built that we can get into later with all these new powers and laws that are getting put into place this year in Australia. When people see the freedom fighters inside their own countries that they agree with using Bitcoin because they've been debanked, that is a way to win the hearts and minds. So anyway, I kind of said a bunch of stuff there. I'm pretty bullish. I'm not concerned.
I think they're
about
valid points.
AI.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of the fundamental thing because when you do happen to mention Bitcoin, like people immediately seem to grok AI. They're like, oh, cool. Yeah, like, I guess that kind of can help. Unless you're like hyper, I don't know, anti all of that kind of thing, anti-tech, in which case you're probably not going to get Bitcoin either. But yeah, I just noticed that when you say AI in a sort of a social setting with people that you don't really know, they don't think twice about it. They're like, yep, sounds good. But if you mention Bitcoin, oh, Jesus.
And that reaction, I would claim that reaction is purely because crypto and shitcoining has shat on the entire perspective of Bitcoin from the normie perspective. If Bitcoin, if people only interacted with Bitcoin and they interacted with Bitcoiners and Bitcoin companies with good morals, they would have generally a better opinion of it. But because the media has been weaponized against it, crypto scams and gambling are rife. They probably have 3 or 4 friends that have been scammed in some shitcoin thing. They immediately write off Bitcoin. Whereas AI is so new that they haven't necessarily had that negative thing stamped into their brain about AI yet. And that's why I think that when we do see something like some kind of AI goes haywire and bombs a school in Iran or something, for all we know, there was a school in Iran that got bombed, a school of girls in Iran got bombed, like that happened. For all we know, the decision to push that button might have been Anthropic. It might have been OpenAI. We just don't know. That might come out in 6 months. Or some other incident might happen, which turns out, it was AI that pressed the button and blew up a bus full of children. Suddenly that's like, okay, well, the normie will suddenly be like, well, maybe we shouldn't be all in on this AI stuff. So I'm not fussed. I'm not concerned.
System stresses, dark days. It's hard, man. It's hard. I kind of know how Matt and Marty feel when they have to do this every single week. Australia passes digital asset bill bringing crypto platforms under licensing. So they're asking crypto exchanges and custodians. Crypto exchanges is a catch-all for all of the shitcoin casinos, plus the Bitcoin only exchanges, Hardblock being one of the first and longest running in Australia. We all have to now go out and obtain financial services licenses as the country moves to regulate digital asset platforms. You've been at the coalface of this for months now. What does this mean?
You're right. I've been knee deep in the regulatory swamp for a while now. It sucks. It just sucks. It's basically saying that any business that wants to play in the Bitcoin space or the crypto space, if they want to play in shitcoins, whatever, they now have to get an AFSL, an Australian Financial Services License. So this is typically like, this is obviously your banks. This is your large institutions that are handling huge amounts of money. They're handling lots of intricate financial products, very specific financial products. They are now basically saying to anyone that wants to just play with Bitcoin has to get an AFSL. Now, a lot of people will cheer this on and say, "Good, great. This might stop my granny from getting scammed from some rogue entity, unregulated entity operating in Australia." The reality is, it's not going to put a dent in that at all, because most of these scams, they operate on the internet. There's a thing called the internet. Have you heard of it? It allows you to instantly communicate with anyone on the planet. And there happen to be places on the planet that don't follow Australian laws and rules and regulations. And so they will happily continue scamming your granny out of all those money, all of her life savings. Your local Adelaide-based Bitcoin-only exchange, humbly just letting Australians stack Bitcoin. We are now going to have to pay. And the costs are about $1.5 million on average to get one of these AFSLs, because you have to uplift all of your regulatory oversight stuff. You have to get a shitload of insurance. Most of it is an insurance cost. So you have to take out all this insurance, which goes to these big multinational insurance companies, big black holes of fake money. We now have to go and get one of those to continue operating in Australia. So all we're going to see as a result of this change, this ASIC change, is within 2 years, you're going to see probably half of businesses operating in this space shut down, disappear.
They can't afford it.
They can't afford it. They'll relocate. They'll go overseas. They'll just shut down. They'll go, too hard. Sorry, I'm just not going to do this. So they'll shut down. And then the international companies will just gobble up all of their market share. So all this is the regulatory moat that I think I've spoken about before. This is the regulatory moat being created around the existing large players. So your big banks, your big crypto companies, international crypto companies, and everyone else that falls under this jurisdiction now. Because if you go and you look at these advocacy groups that represent these big multinational companies, they're cheering it on. They're posting away on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, it's so good to get regulatory clarity. It's so good to require this AFSL. It's so good." And they'll rattle off all these good things. They are licking the boots as hard as they can, because the government is doing exactly what they want, which is to pull up the ladder behind them so that smaller players, smaller Australian companies cannot compete, because they have to spend $1.5 million just to operate.
Well, not to belabor that point too much, and I certainly don't want to come across as a whinge or crying poor, but you wear a few hats at Hardblock, and your time and energy and attention has been diverted to attending to these regulatory compliance commands that are coming through the pipe. And that is taking you away from other things that we're actively trying to build, develop, and release into the market that will actually help improve a Bitcoiner's capacity to secure their Bitcoin for the long haul. And
or even just save my time completely, so I don't even need to be employed, and suddenly the business can operate cheaper and let you stack sats for cheaper, because you're not having to employ a compliance officer to follow all this crap.
It's a productivity sink, basically. And
Yes.
so and we're not a big company, there's 4 of us effectively. and we spin a lot of plates. And again, I don't want to turn this into a poor hard block sort of a thing, but every other Bitcoin only exchange is dealing with the same garbage. And the problem is that we don't sell shitcoins. We don't distract you with shitcoins. And so our margins are a lot less than any of the others. And I won't name names. You can go find them yourself. But that's kind of the roadblock that we run into, is because we have an innate sense of morality. And I'll put it like that because it is a moral issue. We don't distract you with bullshit. We just ask that you humbly stack and save in the soundest, hardest money that has ever been known to man, so that you can have a better life and a better future, and you can raise a family and you can do cool things in your community. That's all we're trying to do. And now we've got to go and deal with, as you said, it's the same shit that Sam Altman was pandering to the US government. Once they get their foothold in, they can then lobby the regulators. They can establish the moat. They can say AI is really dangerous. We've built this incredibly harmful thing, and we all need to be very careful of it. Sorry about that, but like the solution is for only us to do the AI thing. And it's kind of like, it's so disingenuous, and again, it's a productivity sink. So I don't know. I think the less said, the better. Yeah, maybe it's good for regulatory clarity, and Granny's not going to get scammed. But
I'll just jump in that she won't. Granny will still get scammed by someone operating out of Cambodia, run by the Chinese triads. Like
pig
Granny's
butchering,
still going to get scammed.
You've educated me on that before in the past.
Yeah, so that won't change. But there was a good example of exactly what we're talking about happening before our eyes. There was an article about Binance. So Binance, they got fined $6.9 million over client onboarding issues. So they were basically not classifying risk correctly. They were not disclosing the type of asset that people were signing on to when they bought into this product that Binance was doing in Australia. They got a $6.9 million fine. Now, one of the arguments is for Binance to be operating, to be selling this product, they needed an AFSL. They should have had an AFSL. And that probably would have then ticked the box and allowed them to offer this product without getting a fine. Now, Binance is the biggest exchange on the planet. They've got money to burn. They were like, yeah, we can throw $2 million. We can throw $10 million at getting an AFSL. We don't care. They're just going to do it.
6.9 is a negative externality.
Exactly. They just don't care. And so they'll cop the fine. They'll then pay out the nose to get their AFSL, and then they'll continue doing their shady stuff that they do.
Charging users $2.6 million in fees over that time. So if you're a customer of Binance, you're getting absolutely rinsed.
Yeah. Whereas humble little Bitcoin-only exchanges, and there are a few still operating in Australia, again, half of them will probably shut down because of this AFSL, are stuck looking at this AFSL requirement, and yet we're not the ones offering these dodgy products. We're not the ones costing Australians money through losses and sort of dodgy financial products. And yet we're wrapped up in this, and we're probably going to have to, half of us are going to have to shut down. What's
the solution here? Like, can we, obviously we've got the Australian Bitcoin, ABIB. The name is completely blanking. I'm sorry, Bayani.
Australian Bitcoin industry body.
Thank you. Bayani does a fantastic job lobbying, going to these meetings, all that sort of stuff. Again, this is a big time sink though, and we don't have the resources really to compete. The other guys can just sort of, cool, like just put that on the P&L, on the balance sheet, and we'll just write that off as a petty cash loss or something like that. Is there a path forward to gaining some kind of an ear, or some sort of to be heard somewhat with respect to, look, this blanket moat is just not, it's not effective.
It's too late for that. That needed to be done a year ago, and we tried. We tried. So we were putting in submissions. ABIB was putting in submissions, but you got to remember that there's the big players, the Binances represented by the Digital Currency Council of Australia, whatever it's called, DCIA, some obnoxious thing. These, Kraken and Independent Reserve, these guys are playing shitcoins. They are asking for the regulation. They are asking for the regulatory mode. So when the government is sitting there, love or hate the government, I obviously hate the government, but the government is sitting there and they're hearing 90% of the industry saying, yeah, regulate us, we want it. And they're hearing 10% of us little Bitcoin only players saying it's probably not a good idea. You're just going to hurt Australian businesses. We're a tiny voice in this big room. So I don't know what the answer is. The only answer is would probably get this video taken down. So I can't say it.
We'll post it to Rumble. Don't worry. Let's pivot. Australia's central bank tokenization as pilot finds $16.7 billion upside. Was it 16? It was 24 billion Australian dollars. That's what I read. So the Reserve Bank of Australia is putting its support behind the real world asset tokenization sector, citing recent analysis that it could contribute 24 billion Australian dollars to the economy per year. 6 billion less than that 30 that got lost a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to keep harping on that.
They got to find it somewhere.
I got to keep harping on that. What's going on here?
This is an interesting one. So we've talked about this before. So the central bank has been running something called Project Acacia. So that's been going for about 3 years now.
Such an offensive name.
Project Acacia.
So you can't co-opt such a beautiful plant into such an evil concept. I'm sorry.
That's what they got to do. They have to. It's all marketing. They got to dress it up nicely. But for anyone not aware, this was basically a project, collect a portfolio of pilot programs testing a bunch of weird, shitcoiny financialization stuff and how it might apply and affect Australians, Reserve Bank, our big banks, all this sort of thing. So it's doing things like testing tokenization, DAOs, centralized autonomous organizations.
All those things that broke almost 10 years ago.
Yeah,
and
that have already been
provenly stupid. Yeah.
Yep. And obviously part of this pilot would have been plenty of Australian taxpayer dollars going to the big banks to run these pilots and consulting companies, McKinsey & Co., one of them.
That's where your fuel excise goes, kids.
Yep. Goes to paying these consultants to run these shitcoin projects, which would have just boiled down to a bunch of PowerPoint presentations given back to the Reserve Bank after 3 years. I doubt there was any actual real world things that were done.
Man, I tell you, between the NDIS and this shit, we are in the wrong business.
Oh, ridiculous. Yeah, that's another can of worms. But anyway, the results have now been released from Project Acacia, and they're saying that the main thing that they see as an economic driver is this thing called real world asset tokenization, and real specifically deposit tokenization.
Yes, so this is curious.
This is what they mean by this, like real world asset tokenization. This is basically because they've got in their head this idea of blockchain is the future, not Bitcoin, it's blockchain. And let's take a real world asset like a real estate portfolio and let's tokenize it. Let's put it on a blockchain, and then we can sell shares of this token. Not only do you now, if you have an investment property, previously you'd hold a piece of paper which says this is my investment property. Now you hold a piece of paper which says that you hold a token which represents this real estate property sitting on a ledger somewhere. So that's the thing that they believe is going to generate $6.7 billion of revenue to the Australian economy.
Is it a ledger that I have a copy of? Sorry to interrupt.
No, definitely not. No, it's centralized, it's controlled, it's held by a single entity. It's probably held by Commonwealth Bank or BlackRock, probably BlackRock, Blackstone, whatever these asset companies are called. And this is my question is, okay, you're saying this is going to generate, it's $24 billion. This is going to generate $24 billion in the Australian economy. But my whole thing is, well, if the ledger is held by a multinational American tech company, is that really generating income for the Australian economy, or is that just that's just lifting the bottom line of an American tech company? because they're tokenizing Australian real estate onto their platform, onto their centralized control platform. It's bullshit. And then they go to talk about this new dystopian thing, deposit tokens. So what this talks about is you have your deposit at the bank. Instead of having a dollar balance sitting there, you're given a deposit token. So Commonwealth Bank will give you a token to say, oh yeah, you've deposited $10,000 into your Commonwealth Bank account. Here's your tokens. Here's your Commonwealth Bank funny bucks that you can then go and spend in ComSec to buy some shares, or
Time
you can
zone
use
ticket.
to. Yes, literally, it is literally that. Like they are taking time zone tickets, or you go to a theme park and sometimes they
It's
have this thing
literally
where
dollary dues. Like we joke, but it's
yeah,
dollary dues.
as you walk into the gate, you pay $100 and you get 100 tokens of Disney bucks or something, and then you can use that in the theme park. That is literally what they're doing here with these deposit tokens. You deposit $100 with the Commonwealth Bank, those dollars disappear, gone. Commonwealth Bank is rehypothecating, doing whatever it wants to do with those dollars. They're gone. You are given your Commonwealth Bank tokens, which you can then go and spend in. Well, I'm going to offset my mortgage over here. I'm going to use as my deposit over here. I'm going to use it in ComSec. I'm going to buy some shares over here. Like funny tokens. But the scary thing that I think is going to eventuate from this is it allows Australians to become the product much more easier than we are today. So Commonwealth Bank can now say, oh, we have a portfolio of depositors with these tokens, and you almost become productized through your entry on their ledger, which they can then transact and trade with each other and use to secure their deals and investments and stuff on the global stage. Like this is allowing Australians to become an easier to manage product in these financial ledgers managed by these centralized entities. And that's what they learned through their 3-year pilot, Project Acacia. It's good stuff.
It's good stuff. It's all positive. We're a directionally correct nation. I still maintain that we are a developing nation, LARPing as a developed nation. We're completely rug pulled every turn of the. But hey, man, the sports ball is on, and the beer is getting very expensive. So soon enough, we won't even be able to drink to wash our troubles away. Which is, whatever. But, okay, all right. Host Plus, Australia's third largest pension fund by member count. You should have your Bitcoin. You should have a self-managed super fund, to be perfectly honest with you. And you just fill it with Bitcoin. You can do that through Hardblock. Ask us how. Host Plus, Australia's third largest pension fund by member count. Don't they have big parties? I think Andy from the Bitcoin Advisor often sort of goes after this industry quite a bit. But they had an end-of-year party where it cost them some hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not a couple of million. I don't know. Anyway, they're reportedly considering offering cryptocurrencies as an investment option, citing interest from its members in the asset class. Does this mean Host Plus will allow its members to buy Bitcoin or Doge or Power Ledger or any of those other shitty coins, or will it just be Bitcoin?
It'll be the classic shitcoin casino.
Diversified portfolio.
It'll be a diversified
60-40.
portfolio of Bitcoin plus various shitcoins, because they got to be diversified, right? Like you can't diversified into digital assets. Doesn't just mean Bitcoin. It means you got to have your fart coin as well. You got to have your fart
I need to
coin
diversify
allocation.
into more microphones. I need to have at least 2 or 3 others just as an option in case one of them fails, or maybe a diversified portfolio of computers while I'm working, talking to you. That's the old Michael Saylor joke. Do you diversify your chairs that you're sitting in? No, you just sit in one chair because it's the best chair for that moment and for that purpose. Oh,
it's insane. Like I must admit, I didn't read into this story too much because I read Superfund, like it's Host Plus, Australia's third largest super fund, and I switch off automatically because I am firmly of the mindset, and I will never deviate from this mindset, that superannuation is a scam. It is a forced, basically an additional tax on us. Just
tax
give me
on
the money.
businesses, tax on individuals, And then you get penalized as well for saving anyway, because you have capital gains. And let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that we were all considering, taxing unrealized gains above $3 million. Oh, but $3 million isn't a very large amount. Most people don't have $3 million in their bank account. Doesn't matter. You've been compelled to put that money aside. And then if you want to access it, you have to pay tax irrespective. And if you don't want to access it and it is unrealized, we're thinking about maybe taxing you anyway. How much is enough, man?
Valuation to me is no different to just outright theft. Well, you're saying that I can't spend this money today. I have to put it away by law in a retirement account that I can't access until I'm 65, which will probably be 75 by the time I'm that old. And with the way the world is going, am I even going to get to that old? Probably not.
We're debasing the currency, meanwhile, by 10%. We're hoping for a 7% return.
I'm probably going to die in the next 5 years when someone clocks me over the head.
Because we don't want you reliant on the welfare system, Mike. We want you to be able to have a sound, comfortable retirement. So, you're going to need to start squirreling away your extra cuck bucks such that you don't have to rely on the state. Or, is that going to work? Has it ever worked? Superannuation is such a new concept anyway in terms of all of this. Basically everything that we talk about in terms of, quite literally anything, everything in terms of the history of the universe, we're half a second in as a human species, so we're talking micro milliseconds, nanoseconds, this concept of superannuation and all this other garbage that we just have to deal with day in, day out. It's just it's too much. It's too much. I'm tired, boss. I'm tired.
I'm excited. I think that the more chaos that there is, the more chances there are to reset the system. When the system cracks, that's our chance to get in there, drive a wedge into there and break it open so that something new can spring forth. And that's what, war is hell. I'm always anti-war, but this war, which shouldn't be happening, but it is creating a fuel crisis, maybe, still not sure about that. But if it does, it could create enough political angst amongst the population to drive real change. So there is some optimism to be had in the chaos, in the gloom. But most people my age have doubts that they'll be able to access their super ever. Will we even get to that point? There's a good chance that if the mismanagement of our fuel reserves continues, that I'm just going to get clocked in the head with a cinder block for someone that needs to steal my tank of diesel in the next 5 years. So what good's my super at that point? If I had my super today, I could have bought my own private tank of diesel and kept out back.
I don't want to give anyone any ideas, but if you do hold, if you have an SMSF, you got to have superannuation something by law. So you might as well have an SMSF, and if you can have an SMSF, you might as well chuck it in Bitcoin because it's going to outperform everything over the period of time that you need it. And you can take self-custody of it. And I'll just leave it there.
Let's talk about self-custody with the new rules that are coming in with AUSTRAC. I don't want to harp on this for too long. I think we're already approaching an hour, but people might have been aware, I've been harping on about it quite a bit, but AUSTRAC, the Australian financial regulator, is the other source of angst for Bitcoin companies and Bitcoiners this year. So on one hand, we've got ASIC bringing in the AFSL requirement. And then on the other end of the regulatory spectrum, we've got AUSTRAC, which is our Australian financial regulator that is trying to track and hopefully capture people engaging in money laundering, terrorism financing, all these sorts of things. This year, they brought in a ton of new rules, pretty nasty rules, and maybe we'll throw up a blog post which is going to go through all these different changes in a bit more detail. Hopefully, we can link to that in the show notes as well. But on self-custody, soon, not yet, but soon, within the next 3 years, Austrac is going to require more information given up to about people withdrawing to self-custody. So that is coming. So keep that in mind. It's not in place yet, but it is coming. If you're a hard block customer, we'll try to keep you notified as much as possible when certain things are going to change, certain information is going to be made available to regulators. We'll try and keep an open and honest upfront on the level with that. But getting Bitcoin into self-custody now is still an option to you. And once that Bitcoin is in self-custody, there is nothing stopping you from transacting peer-to-peer within your community in a private, sovereign way. Once you have that Bitcoin, the government right now can't touch you, can't affect you. So you can still trade just like you're trading cash, hand in hand, in your local community. So I'm trying to get the word out that people need to get serious about circular economy, physical cash, self-custodial Bitcoin. You need to have that in your community, because if the government continues going down what it's doing, and we're seeing it right now with all these Austrac changes, which you can read about if you're really interested, but the panopticon is closing in. The cage is lowering right now on top of us, and everything that is in these custodial systems will be tracked and tagged and made perfectly available to our government at all times, and international governments as well. So even if you're thinking, well, I'm just going to disappear to Singapore, I'm going to disappear to Dubai, almost every country on the planet is a party to these FATF regulations. The country that you escape to is probably going to be part of it as well. And the entities that you might use to move your Bitcoin, move your dollars, are also going to be party to these regulations. You need to be thinking peer-to-peer, and you need to be starting to do that today and having those conversations today.
Yeah, it's important that everybody do note that, number one, cash isn't cash is fine, like, fiat cash within a circular economy, but it's not circular because it can be diluted and devalued without your consent. So it's only going to be circular for, like it's time scarce. Bitcoin really is the only local money to use in a circular economy. You got to, if you want to keep your money local and within your community, you just have to use Bitcoin. The cool thing is that you can spend that Bitcoin globally. So you can literally think locally, act locally, but you can also act globally, think globally. This is a beautiful thing about it. And we've advocated for this for quite some time, is if you want to keep money local, you do need to use Bitcoin. Another point, there is a book called Crypto Economics, never mind the title, by Eric Voskuil. And in that, he explains that because the state is the state, they will act like the state. And so Bitcoin fundamentally, axiomatically, is black market money. Now, as hard block, obviously we sell white market. You have to KYC, AML, you have to do all the things. But once you take self-custody of it, it is yours. It's peer-to-peer electronic cash. It says it on the first sentence of the white paper. All you have to do is read that. If you want to understand what Bitcoin is, you just need to read that first line. Peer-to-peer electronic cash. And if you take self-custody of your Bitcoin, that's really the only way. That's where the evolution starts in terms of building out things. And we're not being antagonistic. We're not being confrontational. We're not contesting anything. There is nothing to contest. What we want to do is just build something that is good. All of these pricks at McKinsey and Austrac and all of these things that do these bloody PowerPoint presentations over a 3-year period and then lose 30 billion. Thank you, Katie Gallagher. They all are doing, they don't want to be necessarily inherently not good people, but they're not doing good things. They're not contributing to the advancement of civilization. And quite literally, that's why I'm in Bitcoin. That's why I work at Hardblock. That's why I do the things that I do. Because I just want to have nice things again. I don't want to live in a shithole. I don't want to have to ration fuel like we have to at the moment. Come on, where are we? This is nuts. I just wanted to say that, Bitcoin, whatever you think, you must take self-custody. Ask us how we can help you set up your hardware wallets. And actually, to that point, I might as well just riff on it a little bit. We are launching we've been doing this. We've been sort of dripping it out over the last few months, but we are on the cusp of launching a brand new product called Guard Block. And it is basically a tool for you to use to ensure that you amplify your security and your custody for the long haul, quite literally for the long haul. Because at the end of the day, most self-custody setups, they don't fail they tend to fail because, I don't know, maybe you lose your backups. Maybe you forgot the steps to write them down, to give them to your heirs, give them to your next of kin, your mum, your brother, sister, whatever, your kids. Sometimes you have changing life circumstances and you're just moving house, and then all of a sudden you kind of like forget where you put the hardware wallet, or it gets lost in the move or whatever. Bitcoin doesn't forgive these mistakes at all. And as the size and value of your stack grows, the cost of getting that wrong is, it compounds basically. And so Guard Block is there to solve that problem. We've been working on this, Mike. Maybe you can explain a little bit about what it does. And then I'll maybe mention the early adopter offer that we've got.
Yeah, so the main thing to keep in mind is that if you're sitting there and you've just heard my tirade about getting into self-custody, but you're still of that mind of just having that little bit of fear, that little bit of doubt that maybe you'll lose your seed phrase, you'll lose your hardware wallet, you'll make a mistake, Guard Block is definitely for you. It's for a lot of different Bitcoiners out there, but if you have that little seed of doubt that has stopped you from making that extra step because you still want some kind of safety net, that is what Guard Block provides. And we've done it in a way where you're not relying on us 100%. You're not trusting us. You still hold your keys, and you can still unilaterally move your Bitcoin out of the service if you decide that we might be doing the wrong thing, or we disappear, or we go out of business, or something happens to us. You still retain full control of your Bitcoin.
You have independent access to your Bitcoin, which is
Correct.
So important.
Correct. And then the difference is that if something does happen, if something bad happens, your house burns down, you lose all of your backups, you lose everything, that's when a time lock works in your favor. So Guard Block is based on time locks, which are basically baked into the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain. After a certain amount of time, certain access does become available to us to help you recover your Bitcoin. So that is our business model with this product in particular. So while everything's hunky-dory, there's no issues, there's no dramas, you are still in full control. But if you do lose everything, you are fully stuck, that's where we can bail you out. So it is basically a lifeline to help people that have that little bit of lingering doubt about custodying their Bitcoin. Now, there is some extra nuance here around, we also let you do things like spending controls. We'll let you implement inheritance protocols so that we can make sure that your inheritors get access to your Bitcoin. If you do get hit by a bus tomorrow, we'll make sure that the Bitcoin gets into their hands and they know how to use it. Because that's another concern, where one person is very into Bitcoin, they understand it, they understand what to do. But if that person disappears, does their wife know what to do? Do their kids know what to do? So part of Guard Block is helping square that circle and helping out those different scenarios as well. Right now, you can jump on, invites are going out now. So previously you could express interest, you could have a chat with us, but we are now actually actively sending out invites. So if you jump onto guardblock.com, have a read about what it is, and then there's a join waitlist button there. If you sign up to that, you'll get a little info, you'll get an email from us, which lets you book in a time to have a conversation. We just have it online. You can ask any questions that you've got. We can walk you through the process, and to actually then get an invite to the platform so you can jump in, open a vault, set up some spending controls. And as DJ said, we've got a good deal at the moment. Right now, we've got like an early access deal happening. So if you sign up, you get 12 months free, completely free. You can jump in, you can open vaults, you can put Bitcoin in, there's no fees levied. And if you decide you don't want to use it, you just move your Bitcoin out, do a Bitcoin transaction, pull your Bitcoin out in 12 months. No questions asked, you can just move on. But if you do decide to continue using us beyond the 12 months, then you also get 50% off your first 5 years of using a vault. So pretty good deal there. We haven't really decided how long we'll keep that deal going, but we are kind of in this launch thing now. So we're sort of transitioning from this early access to regular access. So it won't be around for too much longer, but it is there at the moment. And yeah, it's pretty good. Have a chat with
If
us.
you're an existing Hardblock customer, we will be sending out an email pretty soon with that sort of detail and explain the pricing. So you guys will get that sort of first come, first served right of refusal. And you can actually, I mean, you can start looking into it now. Go to guardblock.com. But yeah, we'll send out an email to all the Hardblock subscribers and users, anyone that gets the Easy Bitcoin newsletter, anyone that tunes into this show, and you will get that first 12 months free and then 0.1. So it's 50% off over the first 5 years, which is pretty remarkable. The thing about this, the more I've thought about it, the more I've tried to articulate and communicate it, basically makes holding Bitcoin fearless. You don't have to have that lingering seed of doubt. Like, you still do your hygiene, do your best practice. That's crucial. Like, that's part and parcel of participating in this ecosystem. And we encourage that. This isn't some sort of like set and forget thing. But there is just that, it just takes a load off
It
your mind.
removes the little doubt, the tiny doubt in the back of your mind of, what if I, get hit by a bus, what happens? What if I wrote down my recovery phrase incorrectly? What happens? That's the sort of things that we're trying to capture with this product here and help you out.
So to close out the show, I mean, obviously it's a complete shit show. We're lurching from crisis to crisis to crisis to crisis. Like, I mean, I have been around the block, and I'm almost certain I've seen twice, if not 3 times, the amount of crises as my parents have in infinitely less period of time. Kind of getting over it, to be honest. But because of Bitcoin, I can stand up and I can say, I reject your reality and I substitute my own. So yeah, that'll do it for the Australian Bitcoin Podcast, episode 109. The system stresses. Mike, excellent. We got into Mike Jones territory there, man, and you've certainly articulated and outlined a bunch of things coming down the pike, and life's about getting better problems. So maybe these are better problems. To be honest, there should be non-existent, but we're talking about the state here, so it comes with the territory. Dude, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
No worries. Thanks very much.